Part 39. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 381. Chapter 381. Who are you taking advantage of? But she had never seen the two of them, so she couldn't make a decision at the moment, so she said cautiously, "Old madam, can I tell you if I can meet the two masters? Miss Nanan is still young, and she is a girl. She will get married when she grows up. I need to find a good uncle to rely on." Old Mrs. Lee softened her expression when she heard that she was really thinking about her master. "Okay, I'll ask my second brother to come forward and take you to see the two Mr. Sunday. Our family doesn't care which house you want to stay at, or which house can take you in." After that, she pointed to the two packages and said, "At the beginning, the collar Mrs. son gave me was said to be a pair with my daughter. I'm afraid I lost her one. If you take this back, it can be regarded as a gift. Think about it. In addition, Mrs. son gave our family 100 taels of silver, and our Lee family now pays back 10 times. Sister-in-law Lee was afraid that the old lady would stop walking around again, so she quickly kowtowed again. "Old madam, I don't want any money. Our madam has passed away. Please take pity on my orphaned girl and help her a little more." Tao Hongying looked at the old lady and asked, "How do you want us to help?" Sister-in-law Lee thought about it for a long time and quickly responded, "With this money, can I ask the old lady to help me buy a small manor or a farm or something like that? At least there will be some production a year, and the slaves and ladies will not have to look at whoever they choose to live with. In the future, the ladies will be able to dowry when they get married. Also, during the festivals in the future, can the slave and the young lady come to kowtow to the old lady? Just ask the old lady for protection. I am really afraid that I will not be able to protect the young lady when she grows up." The old lady immediately shook her head, "No. If it's inconvenient for you to take away the money, you can leave it here temporarily and pick it up later. But it's not easy for our family to handle the purchase of land and property, so you can do it yourself. Besides, you don't need to come to the house again during the holidays. Tomorrow I will ask my second son to take you to son's house. This will be the last bit of kindness to Mrs. son. In return, from now on, you can take care of yourself." Sister-in-law Lee wanted to say something else, but Tao Hongying had already called Aunt He to take them back to the family's wing. Sister-in-law Lee was very disappointed, but she didn't dare to say anything. She hugged her daughter and kowtowed again, then bowed her eyebrows and left. Early on the next morning, Li Lao changed into a brocade robe. Yeshan drove the carriage, took Grandma He and sister-in-law Li and their servants into the city. Sister-in-law Li and my daughter-in-law dressed up specially, but instead of tidying up, they smeared a lot of black dust on their clothes, head and face, looking as embarrassed as those fleeing from the desert. When Mrs. Lee and Tao Hongying saw them off, they were shocked when they saw them like this, but then they understood. With this mentality alone, even without the Lee family as a backer, the future life of the master and servant would be the same. At the Sun family in the north of the city, Sun Chengjian deliberately stopped teaching for one day because he received a post from Uncle Zhongshan yesterday saying that he was coming to visit today. At this moment, he and his cousin Sun Si Yuan were sitting together drinking tea, and they both wondered why Uncle Zhongshan came to visit. "You don't want to send your children to study, right?" Sun Si Yuan was more familiar with the history of the Li family because he worked as a Yamen official. Even he knew that Li Jiaran, his student at Hanbo, was the eldest grandson of the Li family. But Li Jiaran only studied in the academy for a few months, and he was not his close disciple. Even now that he knew where the Li family was, he didn't shamelessly come to visit. And Uncle Zhongshan is Jiaran's father. Could it be that he came to visit today to ask him to be a teacher in the village? He heard that there is a school in Rujintan. The two brothers had their own thoughts and were thinking fast when Li Lao and others arrived. The Sun brothers hurried to the door and saw women and children coming down from the carriage. They were all a little confused. After welcoming Li Laoer into the house and exchanging a few words, Li Laoer and Sun Siyuan bowed. "Thank you very much for your careful teaching to me, sir. I don't want to see you here again." Sun Siyuan hurriedly returned the gift and said with a smile, "My uncle is like this, my subordinates are really frightened. Your young master is smart and polite, and he is also talented in reading. Although I have only taught for a few months, I still feel honored to come here. But I don't know, your master, where does Mr. Fu study now?" Li Laoer listened with a smile and couldn't help but sigh. When he took his son to Hanbo Academy, he was afraid of stepping on ants while walking. His cautiousness and restraint are still vivid in his mind. And the Mr. Sun in front of me was the best gentleman in the academy at that time, and he was also the brother-in-law of the dean, in charge of the general affairs of the entire academy. Although he was kind to the father and son, he was still somewhat condescending. Just 3 years later, he, a peasant man, became an uncle, while Mr. Shiyuan became a small official in the yamen. When facing him, he had to call himself a subordinate. How unexpected the changes in the world are. Of course, he couldn't say these words. He just responded, "Not long after our family moved here, Grn went to Luoan Academy to study. Now he doesn't have time to go home often." Mr. Sun nodded and said with praise, "Young master, if you have accumulated a lot of experience, you will definitely become a blockbuster and be named on the gold medal list." "Thank you, sir, for your kind words." The two sang and talked lively, leaving Sun Chengjian aside. He was always good looking, but he was also angry that his cousin didn't mention his acquaintance with the Li family beforehand, so he couldn't bear it now. He said, "Uncle, you are here today, and my humble house is really full of glory. For this reason, I specially gave the school children a holiday. I just didn't know that my uncle is here, but do you need our brother's help? If so, uncle, just ask. Cousin Si Yuan is working as an errand in the government office. Even if he is not able to do it, what about my incompetent brother?" This statement means that Sun Si Yuan is not free. If the Li family wants to find someone to serve, they can only choose him. Sun Si Yuan raised his eyebrows, lowered his head to drink tea, and said nothing. Li Laoer smiled faintly and motioned for Enti to bring sister-in-law Li and Nanan forward. "Mr. Sunda is right, I really have something to do when I come here today. However, it's not about our family, but the clan members from your family are sent to join us. Earlier, when my brother returned from a boat trip to Quanzhou Prefecture, he met these two masters and servants because our family had met them once before. We helped take care of them on the way. I specially sent them to my house today." The tribesmen defected? Sun Si Yuan and Sun Chengjian were both stunned when they heard this. They thought of countless reasons, but they never thought that this was the reason for the visit. Sister-in-law Li hugged her daughter and fell to her knees and began to cry. She was quite smart and did not say that the uncle of the Wang family had poisoned his master. She only said that the master was missing, his wife died of illness, and the uncle could not live in his family. Fortunately, I remembered that my uncle Nanan was here and came to seek refuge. Sun Si Yuan was very surprised when he heard that his second cousin was missing and his cousin-in-law passed away. He asked carefully for a long time. But Sun Chengjian didn't say a word, his brows furrowed tightly. Sister-in-law Li was crying and talking at the same time. From the corner of her eye, she looked at the expressions of the two Mr. Sun clearly, and she had an idea in her mind. She pulled her daughter, went directly to hug Sun Chengjian's trousers, and cried loudly. "Please, for the sake of our dead master, please take in the slave and the young lady. The young lady is young, but she can only be raised with a mouthful of food. This slave can work and make needlework. When the young lady gets married, the dowry money will be earned by the slave. She will definitely not be a drag on the master." Sun Chengjian was not happy to begin with. When his father remarried and gave birth to a younger brother, he disliked him in every possible way. He had been away from home for so many years and had not received much support from his family. Now that his younger brother is dead, he actually still has to help raise his children? Think he is being taken advantage of? But the Lee family's uncle is present. If he refuses, will the Lee family think that he is cold-blooded and cruel? While he was hesitating, a woman suddenly shouted loudly outside the door, "No! Master, we can't accept them." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 382. Chapter 382 The Best Acting Partner. Sun Chenjian's eyes lit up, but Sun Siyuan frowned and subconsciously looked at Li Laoer and others. In the blink of an eye, a fat woman rushed in from the door. She was about 40 years old and had an average appearance. But the angry look on her face made her even more arrogant and harsh. Wearing a red muslin dress, it seems to show her status as a head wife. Unfortunately, paired with the old-style gold hairpin on the back of her head, it not only does not show nobility, but is vulgar and eye-catching. She did not salute the distinguished guest Li Laoer when she entered the door. Instead, she raised her foot and kicked sister-in-law Li. Sister-in-law Li had her back to the door. She didn't expect to be beaten. She was kicked down unexpectedly. She screamed in pain, hugged her daughter and hid next to Mr. Li. The fat lady wanted to chase her, but Sun Chengjian stopped her and pretended to scold her. "What are you making a fuss about? There are distinguished guests here." Sun Siyuan felt really embarrassed, her face turned red, and she tried her best to persuade her with patience. "Sister-in-law, this is Uncle Li, who kindly sent his clan members to join him. You must not be rude, apologize quickly." But the fat lady only glanced at Li Laoer and ignored Sun Siyuan. She turned around and tugged on Sun Chengjian's ears and started scolding him. "Sun Chengjian, if you dare to let anyone in, I will die with you today. We have 3 concubines and 8 children at home, and the rice jar is bottomed out, so we will be hungry at night. You don't care about it at all, but you still going to cause trouble for me?" As she spoke, she probably felt sad and aggrieved, so she sat down on the chair next to her and started to cry loudly. "This life is really unbearable. I used to be a good lady, but why did I become blind and marry into a wolf's den? Oh my, I might as well just die. What's the point of living?" Sun Chengjian was anxiously circling around, as if he was afraid that his wife would commit suicide, and kept trying to persuade her. "Why are you crying? I'm not a concubine, I'm just my second brother's servant who brought my niece to join me." "Bah!" The fat woman spit hard and cried even harder. "Those 3 concubines, you said you were pitiful and took them in temporarily, but they were all put on the bed in the end. Who knows what happened? Don't even think about lying to me again." Sun Chengjian blushed, pulled up his sleeves to cover his face, and cursed in a low voice, "Shut up, don't say anything outside." Sun Siyuan gritted his teeth angrily, but there was nothing he could do. Seeing that there was no water in Li Laoer's teacup, but he still held it and kept drinking, he really wanted to find a crack in the ground to get in. "Had I known that my cousin's family was of such a virtuous nature, he would not have come to seek refuge even if he had been living on the sea. It's okay to embarrass myself on weekdays, but now I still resort to such little tricks in front of Uncle Li." Sister-in-law Li hugged her daughter, perhaps frightened, and crawled next to Sun Siyuan, crying heartbrokenly, "Master, please take in this slave and Miss Nanan. I regret that if I stay with you, we will be beaten to death. I am not afraid of death, but our master and his wife only have Miss Nanan's flesh and blood. You, please help me, sir." Sun Siyuan looked at his cousin and saw that his cousin was pretending to be deaf and mute. It was obvious that he, his uncle, did not want to take care of it. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He shouted, "Shut up." In an instant, the room became quiet. Sister-in-law Li did not dare to cry anymore, and the fat lady stopped making trouble. Sun Si Yuan took a deep breath and said, "Cousins, you are not willing to take my daughter in, are you?" Sun Chengjian coughed dryly and said vaguely, "Well, Si Yuan, you also know that our family is really burdened. It is difficult to add 2 more people, and we are afraid of wronging the children." "Okay, then I'll take them in." Sun Si Yuan didn't want to listen to his excuse and said coldly, "Cousin, please give me a document. From now on, you don't have to worry about this child's food, drink, clothing, and dowry. But equally, hers you can't interfere in anything, including marriage." Of course, Sun Chengjian secretly breathed a sigh of relief and tried hard to make up for the lost face. "It's true that I'm her uncle, but I can't support her, so I can't interfere with her affairs." "Then write the paperwork," Sun Si Yuan urged with a dark face. Sun Chengjian found a pen and ink, wrote the document, signed his name, and took his fingerprints. Sun Si Yuan also asked the fat lady to sign her name and have her fingerprints pressed. The fat woman rolled her eyes and curled her lips, but she did as she was told. Sun Si Yuan dried the ink, folded the document and put it in his arms, then stood up and saluted Li Laoer. "Uncle, I'm really sorry today the misfortune in my family has made you laugh. I'll invite you to tea another day and apologize in person." Li Laoer also stood up and said with a smile, "Sir, you're welcome. I'm just helping to send people here. As long as you don't dislike the Li family's troubles, I'll take my leave now. I'm sending you off to my uncle." Sun Si Yuan stretched out his hand to guide him. Occasionally, he turned around and saw his cousin and cousin standing together. Their expressions were filled with pride, and there was no trace of the seeking death and survival just now. He couldn't bear it anymore and said something loudly. "Sister-in-law, don't say that you are from a noble family in the future. After all, everyone knows that your mother's family is a butcher. Does your father write and draw on pigskins every day?" After saying that, he turned around and walked out the door, ignoring the curses behind him. Li Laoer didn't seem to hear anything, and didn't look at sister-in-law Li and Nanan anymore. He bowed his hands and said goodbye, and then got on the carriage. Horse hooves were tapping on the bluestone ground, and they quickly turned out of the alley, never to see the Sun family again. Li Laoer finally laughed loudly. "Ha ha ha, Mr. Sun scolded you too hard. He writes and draws on pigskin every day, ha ha ha." On the carriage shaft, Yeshan was laughing so hard that he almost dropped the whip in his hand. Grandma he even lowered her head and her shoulders were trembling. The 3 masters and servants finally stopped laughing and arrived at the main street. Li Laoer found a snack shop and bought some snacks he liked for his niece, such as sesame candies and pine nut candies. He also bought 2 jars of candied fruits. Not long after I left the city, I encountered the Marquis's carriage on the road. The butler leaned his head out of the car, saluted, and said with a smile, "Uncle, are you entering the city? If I had known, I would have picked you up and brought you back to Rujintan." Li Laoer waved his hand and asked with a smile, "Why is the butler here? Is there something wrong?" "Don't worry, uncle, there's nothing urgent. It's our Marquis who came to the palace to discuss matters. He asked the emperor for some snacks and candied fruits, and asked the old slave to send them to the princess quickly. I feel sorry for the princess who has taken medicine and has no sweets to eat. What a coincidence, I didn't buy less. Fu Niuer will be very happy soon." The 2 of them said a few words and then walked towards Broken Gold Beach one after another. At this moment, a carriage had already stopped in front of Li's house. It turned out that Li Zhensheng had brought back all the dead fish from the dock. Mrs. Li, along with Shui Yun Shuiling and others, were busy killing the fish, salting them, and drying them in the sun. Seeing Mr. Li and the housekeeper jumping out of the carriage, each carrying large and small bags of candied snacks, Mrs. Li really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Are you planning to open your home into a dessert shop? The boss just bought a lot of it." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 383. Chapter 383. It doesn't hurt even if you put it in your eyes. The housekeeper smiled and said, "Old madam, this is a good thing. It means that there are too many people who love the princess. Besides, there are several young masters at home who can eat with the princess. The princess has always been generous. She would not miss a bite of the snacks and fruits from the old slave, let alone his own brother. I am afraid that if we share them together, the princess will eat more deliciously. I have to say that the chief steward is in charge of the prince's mansion on weekdays, and he is very sophisticated in his ways." With just a few words, the old lady and the Li family all started laughing. Jian and her brothers were playing in the yard when they heard some noise and ran out. When the housekeeper saw her holding up her rice dumpling hand, she quickly put down her things and hugged her. "Hey, miss, why are you hurt so badly? I thought it was just a small cut." Jian smiled cheerfully and patted the butler on the back with her other little hand. "Uncle Butler, I don't feel any pain at all. Grandma said it will be fine soon." Yes, it will be fine soon. Our eldest lady is such a good child. It is because of the blessing of the gods and Buddhas. She will be fine in the blink of an eye." The head butler was really distressed. He didn't know if it was his imagination. He always felt that the young master seemed to have lost weight. He must have been bleeding too much. To make up for it, you must make up for it quickly and hard. There seems to be some donkey hide gelatin in the warehouse of the home mansion. I'll find it when I get back soon. Li Zhensheng and Li Laoer didn't know what the chief steward was thinking, so they smiled and led him into the house to drink tea and sit down to talk. The big butler opened the snack box and gave it to the young master. It must be said that the snacks produced by the imperial kitchen looked exquisite. Jian asked Auntie to wipe her uninjured hand, and then ran around the house again and again, giving a piece of snack to her grandma, her eldest uncle, her second uncle, and the housekeeper, and finally she and the brothers had a delicious meal together. Everyone was already feeling sweet in their hearts before they had time to eat snacks. Such a sensible fat girl was so cute that it didn't hurt even if she put it in her eyes. The steward glanced at the dried fish in the yard and asked Li Zhensheng, "I heard that the great master's fleet has arrived. Is this fish brought back with the ship?" "Yes," Li Zhensheng nodded and frowned slightly. "The weather is too hot, ice is expensive, and almost half of the fish and shrimps died on the road." The housekeeper quickly advised, "There's nothing we can do about it. It's thousands of miles away. If it wasn't damaged when it was delivered here, how could the seafood be sold at such a high price?" Li Zhensheng smiled and said, "The butler is right. My restaurant will reopen the day after tomorrow. If the butler has nothing to do, he will definitely come and have something fresh. This time I hired a chef from the south to cook seafood. His skills are quite good. Okay, I will definitely go to support the great master when the time comes." Jian held a piece of snack in her hand and ate it slowly. She secretly listened to everyone talking and couldn't help but murmur in her heart, "In my previous life, I had nothing to do and read a lot of online novels. One of them, Saltpeter to Make Ice, was almost ruined by the author. She was curious and bored in the mountain home, so she did an experiment. It took a lot of effort to get a small basin of ice. Looking at the refrigerator and freezer at home, I gave up decisively. But she remembers clearly how to make ice from saltpeter. Maybe you can take it out and give it to your uncle. When there are enough ice cubes, can seafood be transported at will? Isn't that silver flowing into Li's house like running water?" Everyone was talking lively, but the fat girl was laughing silly and had already eaten the snacks in her hands that tasted like silver. The housekeeper hurriedly went back to find supplements, said a few words and left. Li Lauer couldn't wait any longer and told the Sun family's joke to his family members. As expected, everyone laughed. But in the end, sister-in-law Li got her wish by bringing her daughter with her, and she was taken in by Sun Si-yuan. Everyone laughed and then put it behind them and no longer paid attention to it. The old lady was about to continue drying the fish when Jie Huan came back. These days, the restaurants in the city have been renovated inside and out. He is learning to cook seafood with the chef invited back from the south. This cook was bought out by Li Zhensheng, so he had no intention of hiding anything. He simply knew everything. Jie Huan was willing to endure hardships and studied seriously, even living directly in the backyard of a restaurant. He missed his parents last night and went back to Luoan. He rushed back here this morning because Mr. Peng helped arrange the enrollment of Jia and Jiaxi and Mao Gear. But when he entered the house without waiting for the news, he saw his sister's injured hand. This honest and diligent boy's eyes were red at that time. What happened to Fu Niuer's hand? Who hurt it? The old lady grabbed her grandson and said quickly, "Don't worry, your sister accidentally cut her hand. It's been 2 days and she'll be fine soon." Ji Yan also hurriedly ran forward, hugged her brother, and tried to change the conversation. "Second brother, can Fu Niuer go to school with the brothers? Both the master and the aunt say that Fu Niuer is smarter than the brothers." Jie Huan hugged his sister and looked at her injured hand carefully to make sure there was no blood on the cloth, so her face looked better. "Silly girl, the academy is full of boys. What are you going to do as a little girl? Play with grandma at home, and after the second brother has learned new dishes, he will come back and cook them for you." Okay, Ji Yan pouted her mouth, as if she was unhappy. Jie Huan coaxed her sister and said to her grandma, "Grandma, when will my brothers enter the academy? I will go back and tell Mr. Peng." The old lady thought for a while and then said, "The restaurant will open soon, and then the Mid-Autumn Festival will be around. Then after the Mid-Autumn Festival, on the 17th, I will send them there in person. Fu Niuer's hand will be almost healed by then, so take her go out and relax." "Okay, I'll go back and talk to Mr. Peng. In addition, my father has chosen a yard not far behind the shop. He has already paid a deposit and will go to the yamen tomorrow to change stalls. Grandma will also go to see the new home by then. How much will it cost? Stay for a few days. It's only been a few days since our family moved to a big restaurant, but we actually talk more and seem to be more stable." Seeing that the old lady was happy, she smiled and said, "When you leave soon, take the Peng family's wedding gifts with you. After all, we are newlyweds, so don't neglect the etiquette. Let your mother take a good look at it. If you are missing, just add some. If you can't mean." "Okay, Grandma." The Peng family's festive gifts were delivered to the shop yesterday, and my mother was worried about what to bring back. The family agreed, and when his grandma called and he to show off as a formality, he took his younger brothers and sisters to play. With a little talkative guy like Brother Mao around, it's really easy for Jie Huan to find out what she wants. When he heard that no one else had intentionally hurt his sister, he lost some of his anger, but he still felt heartbroken. While the family was not paying attention, he took out a piece of silver from his purse and secretly gave it to his sister. Fu Niuer was obedient and took the money to buy some delicious food. Ji Yan pinched the pieces of silver and guessed that her brother had saved them to buy things for Sister Peng. But if he just gave it to her, what would the brother do to coax his wife? She thought for a moment, then struggled down to the ground and ran back to the house. When she came out again, she held an oil paper bag in her hand and stuffed it into her brother's arms. "Second brother, look again on the way, this is Fu Niuer's return gift to you." Jie Huan thought his sister had given him his favorite snacks, so he didn't refuse and rubbed his sister's hair with a smile. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 384. Chapter 384, My Little Money Man Made a Loss-Making Business. Soon, the ceremonial gifts were packed up and loaded onto the carriage along with half a basket of salted fish. The old lady is a person who lives a good life. She told her grandson, "Let your mother dry the salted fish well, then cut it into pieces, fry it in oil, and stew it with tofu. It will also be a good dish." "I know," Grandma Jiahuan waved and left. The carriage bumped and the oil paper bag in her arms was a little shaky. He reached out and took it out, opened it and saw what kind of snack it was. It turned out to be a pair of silver bracelets with twisted wires. The two wires were twisted together, and they looked very delicate. "But it's bumpy and very solid." He suddenly turned his head and looked back. His chubby sister was lying on Grandma's back, waving her rice dumpling hand with him. With red eyes, he also stretched out his hand and waved it hard again and again. The silver dimes he gave only weighed 5 or 6 cents, and he originally planned to buy a good wooden hairpin for Wenjuan. "In the end, I exchanged a pair of bracelets from my sister. I couldn't buy these bracelets without 7 or 8 taels. My sister loves money, this is something the whole family knows. But she and her family have always done business at a loss." Mr. Zhang arrived at Broken Gold Beach and felt as at ease as a fish in water. In just 2 or 3 days, everyone in and outside the village, men, women, old and young, knew him. The old man likes him for his enthusiasm and lack of aloofness as a scholar. Young people like to hear him talk about the places he has visited during his study tour, the different customs, and new things. Of course, many of them can be seen from travel notes. But this does not prevent him from hoping and imagining together with the young people. Over in the valley, he even went to the hot springs every day, and learned how to dog paddle without any teacher. He was so noisy that the guests all knew that Broken Gold Beach had a new, playful gentleman. On the contrary, the little book boy Gilai who came to the village together was only 10 years old, but he was much quieter and more steady. Perhaps he has been a wanderer for so many years that he cherishes his current stable place. Even if classes are not in session, he cleans the inside and outside of the school every day. The villagers saw this and really felt that the personalities of the gentleman and the book boy should be changed. After all, will Mr., who is too lively, lead the children to play crazier? What should I do if I study? But soon, they no longer had this worry. The morning when school reopened, the girls and boys were sitting in rows inside the house, and the courtyard was also crowded with parents of their children, as well as idlers who came to watch the fun. The village chief squatted at the base of the wall and tried to up his airs. Everyone is following the same example, leaning on the cracks of doors, climbing on walls. In the room, Mr. Zhang told the children about his life experience, which aroused the children's sympathy and asked them about their escape from famine. The children are all 8 or 9 years old, and they still have memories of the days when they traveled over mountains and ridges and were chased and killed by barbarians, so they talked about it all. Then Mr. Zhang asked them how they got the good old days now. Some children said that the emperor's kindness was great, some said that the marquis protected it, and some said that the hot springs were carved out of the valley. So Mr. Zhang concluded for the children that the marquis, uncle, and others were all well educated, good at calculations, sensible, and capable. That's why I led everyone to build such a good home and live such a good life. Children are the future of the entire Broken Gold Beach. If Broken Golden Beach wants to live a good life, they must study hard and become the backbone of Broken Golden Beach and protect Broken Golden Beach. The children were given important responsibilities, each with their chests puffed out, their faces flushed with excitement, and almost shouting while reading. The village chief squatting under the wall was extremely satisfied. He knocked the empty pipe pot twice and shouted to the villagers. "Hurry up and get busy, why are you all here to join in the fun?" Could it be that the gentleman Mr. Wen chose was wrong? Everyone laughed and did not argue with the village chief. They dispersed and went about their business with a smile. The peanuts from the fields have to be taken back, and the fruits from the mountains have been picked, and they still need to be sorted and prepared for the winter. In short, as long as you are not lazy, there is always something to do in a farmer's life. But no matter how busy you are, everyone is happy. Walking on such a wide and prosperous road, they were full of strength and did not feel tired at all. The daily dinner is when the family gathers the most complete meals, and the same is true for the Lee family. Young and old sit around, eat together, and talk about what they have been busy with during the day. It's rare that there is no greedy little girl like Ji-Yin on the dinner table tonight. So, no one could help but ask, "Where's Fu-Niur? Does your hand hurt?" The old lady shook her head. "Don't worry. Dr. John came to see you today. The wound has recovered well and the medicine has been changed. The medicinal soup she drank is more effective. Not only does Fu-Niur have no fever, the pain in her hand is also gone." "Then why doesn't Fu-Niur eat?" Everyone felt relieved and became more curious. Mrs. Lee glared at her sons, smiled and scolded, "You are not so spoiled." One of them was afraid that the medicine would be too bitter, so they all went back to buy some candied fruits. Fu-Niur is always greedy, and she ate too much after just one piece. Just now she complained that her stomach hurt. I rubbed it for a long time and she fell asleep. Li Zhensheng and Li Lao rubbed their noses after being scolded and felt a little guilty. "I just wanted to love my niece. I really didn't expect that the child would be uncomfortable due to food accumulation when the child is young. Fortunately, there is nothing wrong with the little niece, otherwise it would not be as simple as being scolded." Tao Hongying hurriedly helped to rescue her and said with a smile, "Mom, it's not wrong for the eldest brother and the second brother to love my niece. It's because this girl is greedy. She didn't obey me many times. She hid the candied snacks and gave them to her later when she took medicine. Just $1 or $2 will do." Mrs. Lee nodded, "Okay, let's hide it for a few days. I'll take care of her at night. When Fu-Niur wakes up, I'll give her some water." Everyone continued to eat, and Li Zhensheng said, "Hongying, if the valley is accessible, can you come to the restaurant to help for a few days? The master invited back from the south can cook seafood, but the family can't afford cooking this piece. Over the valley, there are 2 women who have learned well. They can handle the simple stew set meal, and Tao Hongying will not get into trouble even if she leaves for a few days. Furthermore, she also found it novel to fry and stir-fry in the back kitchen of a large restaurant and wanted to try it. But she still looked at her mother-in-law, a little hesitant. After all, there are only 2 daughters-in-law in the family, and the third sister-in-law is already in Luoan. If she goes to the restaurant again, won't she leave all the trivial chores to her mother-in-law?" The old lady guessed what she was thinking, patted her hand and said, "You can go if you want. Now there are Nanny and Shui Ling Shuiyun at home, and Dong Mei and Yashin are also there next door. Is there a shortage of you to work? Besides, Fu-Niur is sensible, and Jia 11 and brother Mao can also help me, don't worry." Tao Hongying happily agreed and told her eldest uncle on the spot about the new dish she had been thinking about recently. She planned to prepare the ingredients tomorrow and make a portion for everyone to try first. If you think everything is good, you can add it to the menu to add popularity and topic to the restaurant. Li Zhensheng originally meant this, and of course he always said yes. After dinner, everyone discussed it for a long time. They didn't disperse until late at night when the old lady chased them away. Li Zhensheng returned to the west room, and the 3 boys Jiaxi, Jian, and Mao Gear were already asleep. Li Zhensheng covered the children's bellies and sat down at the Kong table, intending to look at the list again and count the posts to see if anyone was missed. This is the opening time, so we need to invite relatives and friends to support us. As a result, as soon as he opened the list, a palm-sized piece of paper fell out. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed flowering. Chapter 385. Chapter 385, the child is getting older and is no longer easy to manage. He picked it up and looked at it. He frowned at first, but his eyes widened as he looked at it. He got up and went to the ground. In the east room, Mrs. Lee was afraid that her granddaughter would feel uncomfortable after sleeping, so she planned to stay a while longer, so she took a sewing basket and continued to make shoes for her grandsons. Having more children and grandchildren will naturally make the family prosperous, but fatigue is inevitable. Just like her, she originally wanted to make a new pair of shoes for each of her 3 grandchildren who were about to go to college, which was also her love as a grandmother. But Jiaran and brother Li are also in the academy, can they be allowed to watch? There are also family righteousness and family joy. One has been away for many years, and it is not easy to come back. The other is taciturn but diligent, so we cannot ignore it. Finally, there is the precious little granddaughter. She has a lot of flesh on her body, but her feet are long. If she can buy more shoes, of course she also needs a pair. In short, she deeply understands the joy and pain of being a grandma. At this moment, she was leaning in front of the oil lamp, threading needle and thread. It's a pity that the oil lamp is a little dim, and I can't put it on. I want to take off the hairpin to pick up the wick, but I am afraid that the light is too bright and will shake my sleeping granddaughter. Just as she was struggling, the door of the room was suddenly pushed open by Li Zhensheng. Old Mrs. Li was startled, and her fingertips instantly pricked with blood. She inhaled painfully and quickly turned to look at her granddaughter. Fortunately, her granddaughter just turned over and fell asleep again. She angrily scolded her son in a high voice, "What are you doing, such a frizzy person? It's so late at night and you don't want to sleep." Li Zhensheng leaned in front of his mother and showed a rare silly smile, "Mom, I didn't mean it, I'm just too happy." Mrs. Li sucked the blood from her fingertips, picked up the needle and thread and gave it to her son, and asked, "Why are you so happy? You made money even before the restaurant opened." Li Zhensheng conscientiously threaded the needle for his mother, and when he handed it to her, he couldn't help but hold his niece's uninjured hand. "Mom, I received a particularly useful gift that can solve a big problem for me. It won't work if our business is not good." Mrs. Li grabbed the solace of her shoes and glanced at her son, seeing the way he looked at her little granddaughter as if she were looking at a rare treasure. There was something else she couldn't guess, and she was really happy and worried about it. The granddaughter is getting older and has big ideas. Occasionally she will make some small moves, but she can't stop her and doesn't want to stop her. First of all, my granddaughter is very smart, and now she will not easily get into trouble. Secondly, the Zhenjiazhuang given by the Marquis can help cover it up. Thirdly, it is no longer enough for a small farming family to have enough to eat and drink. Now that their status is getting higher and higher, and their property is growing, their children and grandchildren always have some difficulties. The little granddaughter is willing to help her uncle and brothers. That is the little granddaughter's responsibility for the family. This is not a bad thing that should be blamed, but Mrs. Li took her eldest son's arm and told her, "When you make money from your business in the future, whether you are in Quanzhou or here, you must do more good deeds and accumulate virtue. Even if you give up some food and bedding, you know." "Don't worry, mother, I know," Li Zhensheng responded sternly. "This is the new capital. It's easy for the people outside the city to survive, but the further you go out, the harder it becomes to survive. In the future, my small fleet will travel back and forth between Quanzhou and Xindu. I plan to take in more orphans with good behavior along the way and teach them well. They will be helpers in the future and they will have a way to survive." "This is good, this is good," Mrs. Li nodded repeatedly after hearing this. "They are poor children. Teaching them some survival skills is much better than giving them a few meals." The mother and son whispered for a long time. After seeing Ji Yan sleeping soundly, Li Zhensheng lowered his head to kiss his niece and then went back to the west room to sleep. Early on the next morning, everyone in the family got up before dawn. Good news: after a dreamless night, I had a full sleep, and it was rare that I didn't have a lazy quilt. At this moment, she hugged her mother's neck and twisted around like a baby. She also wanted to visit her uncle's restaurant. She heard that the decoration took a month, and even her shell bed was borrowed and placed in the lobby to attract customers. It's a pity that no one in the family agreed, as they were all afraid that they would be too busy to take care of her, and she also had to take medicine and change her medicine on a regular basis. Tao Hongying, a plump girl, was made to laugh and cry by her. "Silly girl, you are already a grown-up child, why are you still making trouble? Mother will bring you delicious food when she comes back in the evening." Shui Yun stepped forward and asked, "Fourth madam, how many chili peppers should I bring, fresh ones or dried ones?" Tao Hongying was anxious to pick up her usual seasonings and items with her own hands, but she couldn't let go of her daughter. Fortunately, Ji Yi ran over, hugged his sister and rode on his neck, running all over the yard, occasionally jumping up on the wall and then jumping down again, making Ji Yin giggle non-stop. Tao Hongying took the opportunity to escape and ran to get busy. Brother Cat looked hot and jumped on his feet and shouted, "Third brother, there is me, I want to fly too." Jia An's family was happy to set up a sedan and carried his younger brother to chase his elder brother. Suddenly there was a commotion in the yard, and the quarrel broke out. Li Zhensheng came out of the house, holding a tightly plugged porcelain bottle in his hand. He called Ji Yi to come forward. "Ji Yi, our cargo ships are returning to Quanzhou today. Take this bottle and follow them. When you get there, hand this over to Ding Gui, and no one else will be able to do it. You can also follow suit, and then the next batch of sea goods back." "I understand, Uncle." Ji Yi took the porcelain bottle and stuffed it into his arms. Seeing him being so casual, Li Zhensheng was really afraid that his nephew would make a mistake, so he whispered, "There is a secret recipe in this bottle, which is very important. Whether our restaurant's business will be good in the future depends entirely on it. It must not fall into the hands of outsiders. Li, do you understand?" "Understood." Ji Yi rolled his eyes and took the opportunity to make a condition. "Uncle, can I find a companion? Lu Yang has nothing to do at home, let him go with me." Li Zhensheng had no choice but to wave his hand. "Just ask him. If he doesn't mind the hard work of traveling, then let's go together." "Okay." Ji Yi took his sister off his neck and gave her a big kiss on her fat face. "Fu Niuer, stay at home. Brother will bring you something good when he comes back." After saying that, he turned around and ran away. Ji Yin felt a little discouraged when she saw her brother disappeared. At this moment, she suddenly had a little hope that she could grow up quickly and be able to go wherever she wanted without being bored at home all day long. Soon, everyone in the family went on a long trip, went to a restaurant, and went into a valley. Even Jia and Jiaxi and Brother Cat went up the mountain to trap rabbits. In the busy courtyard, in a blink of an eye, only the old lady and Ji Yin were left, as well as Huanayang, who was confinement in the side room, plus two little babies who only knew how to eat, drink and defecate. The old lady couldn't see her granddaughter's wilted head and brain, so she coaxed, "In a few days, we will go to Luoan to send your brothers to study. Grandma will definitely take you to a restaurant to play, okay? Your hand injury hasn't healed yet. Even if you go today, you can't eat anything. Seafood is fat, and spicy dishes are not good. You can only watch your mouth dripping. How uncomfortable it is." Ji Yin thought about it for a while. There were plates of delicious meals in front of her, but she couldn't move her hands or speak. It was really painful. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, delayed flowering. Chapter 386. Chapter 386, Master Ant is mighty. She made a decisive decision not to be a follower, but to stay home. Fortunately, Mrs. Kui came at this time. The two carriages at the front and rear brought a lot of chicken, fish, meat, and eggs as usual. Jinro, didn't you say you just came to celebrate the festival? Why do you bring so many things? Old Mrs. Lee said angrily. Keep the good things at home and sell them for more money. You study a lot, but we can't just follow the example of a high-ranking scholar. Money is always a good thing, especially if you are living your own life. You will be more confident if you have more money. I understand, Auntie Mrs. Kui replied, holding the old lady's arm. She listened to Mrs. Lee's chatter with a smile on her face. Instead of being angry, she was very happy. She has no father or mother and lives alone in Zhuangzi. It is only when she comes to Li's house that she can hear such nagging, which is particularly cordial. Auntie, you also know that I am the only one in our family, and nothing I eat is sweet. Send it here together and borrow Hong Ying's hand. I am too lazy to eat ready-made. Hong Ying doesn't have time to cook anymore. They all went to the city today. The boss's restaurant will open tomorrow, so they all went over to help, the old lady said as she pulled Mrs. Kui inside. Mrs. Kui subconsciously stretched out her hand to hold Jiyan, and Jiyan screamed in pain. The old lady then remembered and was so frightened that she almost fell down. She hurriedly knelt down to check her granddaughter's injured hand. She saw no blood, but she was still worried. She called Shuiling and went to see Dr. Zhang. Mrs. Kui was so frightened. Fu Niuer, what's wrong with this hand? Who hurt the child like this? Old Mrs. Lee sighed, asked her to take Jiyan into the house with her, and then told her the story. Mrs. Kui is really distressed and angry, and doesn't know what to say. Fortunately, Dr. Zhang came quickly. He opened the bandage and looked at it. He found that the wound had not cracked and was healing well. He couldn't help bragging. I said suturing is the best way. Look, it has only been a few days and the wound has healed. In 5 or 6 days, there will be no need to wrap it with a strip of cloth. Mrs. Kui held Jiyan in her arms and did not dare to open her eyes to look at the hideous wound. Why did such a small child suffer such a big crime? If it could be a substitute, she really wanted to endure the pain for Fu Niu's injury right away. It's a pity that if it can be like this, it won't be her turn. Everyone in the Li family, young and old, is willing. After Dr. Zhang reapplied the medicine and bandaged his body, he didn't know where to go to publicize his great achievements. Mrs. Kui was left holding the good news in her arms and never let go for a moment. Although she has been married, she has no children. She really loves Jiyan, a fat girl, as if she were her own daughter. Sometimes, her pain and confusion cannot be told to anyone and cannot be expressed. But holding the fat girl in my arms and listening to her milky and coquettish expressions, I really didn't have any worries at all. It has only been a few days since we last saw each other. My good child is so injured. She really has nowhere to vent her anger. It is a coincidence that sister-in-law Li came to pick up the things today. Perhaps the Sun Si Yuan family treated their master and servant well, and she was no longer the dirty look she had been before. She changed into an 8-point new fine cloth dress from somewhere, embroidered with flowers, her hair was neatly combed, her whole body was neatly arranged, and she was in high spirits. After entering the door, she didn't even look at Jiyan's injured hand. She just saluted Mrs. Lee and said, "Old madam, I am very grateful to you for taking me in. Now that our young lady has been adopted by the master, we will have someone to rely on in the future. My slave came here today to get something back, and she plans to ask Mr. Tang to help buy property and a shop. Mr. Tang works as an errand in the yamen, so it is easy to arrange these things." Before Mrs. Lee could respond, Mrs. was already annoyed. Whose slave are you? Whose rules have you learned? Since you are so grateful, why did you come in empty-handed? The Lee family took you in and found your clan members. Could it be that not even worth the snacks? What's more, you injured Fu Niu like this, and you asked for something as soon as you walked in without asking a word. Sister-in-law Lee's face turned red after being blocked. When she came out, the master actually gave her money and let her buy things. But she was reluctant to spend it and thought of taking the things first and talking about it later. There are also Fu Niu's hands. Children were injured while playing and grabbing things. They can't be entirely blamed. With this thought in mind, she said, I was in a hurry on the way, so I didn't expect so much. Besides, Aunt Lee didn't say anything, so who are you? Mrs. was waiting for her to do this, so she shouted, slap. Sister-in-law Kyung, who had been standing silently behind, almost rushed forward in 2 steps, and gave sister-in-law Lee 2 big mouths. Sister-in-law Lee fell to the ground with stars in her eyes after being beaten. Sister-in-law Lee's mind was buzzing and she didn't react for a moment. She didn't understand why she was beaten. Mrs. ignored her, turned to old Mrs. Lee and said, Auntie, you have good intentions to care about the old relationship, but such an unruly slave must be punished as well. You have a history with Mrs. Sun, but I don't. You must talk to the Sun family about this matter today, otherwise you will let slaves like this who don't understand the rules go out and walk around in the future. I'm afraid it will cause trouble for the Sun family without even knowing it. After saying that, she called out to Aunt He, where are these naughty things? Take them all and ask sister-in-law Kyung to accompany you to the Sun family to explain the matter clearly. Mother He looked at old Mrs. Lee and saw her nodding, then she quickly turned around and entered the house. Soon, Grandma He came out with a big package. Sister-in-law Kyung immediately grabbed sister-in-law Lee and dragged her out. Sister-in-law Lee panicked. She didn't tell her cousin and his wife about the incident with the Lee family. She only said that her wife had helped the Lee family when they were in trouble. She also wanted to borrow the name of the Lee family so that she could support them in the future. Old madam, I was wrong, I never dare to do it again, sister-in-law Lee said, begging for mercy. Unfortunately, sister-in-law Kyung was impatient and slashed her neck with a knife, completely quieting her down. The Kui family's carriage came and went quickly, leaving the village in the blink of an eye. Ji Yun's eyes widened. If she hadn't injured her hand, she would have wanted to applaud Mrs. Kui desperately. It's so mighty and domineering. Senior sister, you are so amazing. Mrs. Kui was so funny that she raised her hand and pinched her fat cheeks and scolded her, where has your usual cleverness gone? If a little girl bullied her like this, you should have beaten her back hard. We are all adults in the family, so we cannot bully the younger ones, but you are also a child. If you beat me back, no one can say that you are wrong. Ji Yun narrowed her eyes and smiled stupidly, showing a row of white teeth, not knowing how to answer. She is a child, but her soul is that of an adult. She always subconsciously feels that she should not be familiar with girls of several years old. Mrs. Kui had no choice but to hug her and then turn to Mrs. Lee, Auntie, our house is now also an earl's residence. Fu Niu is the princess, and you are the first-grade lady, so you have to put up a good show. If you look at someone you don't like or hear someone whose words don't please your ears, hit them if you need to. Don't be soft-hearted. Not everyone knows the rules and has a conscience. Most of them are shameless, so you have to step on them, but they are respectful and afraid. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 387. Chapter 387, My beans need to be covered with quilt. The old lady smiled bitterly, don't go too far, just 5 years ago, Our family was still a poor family who didn't have enough to eat for half the year. Now we are suddenly rewarded and we have changed from poor to noble. You made me change immediately. How can I change it? Mrs. Kui also knew this truth, and after thinking about it, she said, Auntie is right, you really need to take your time. After the festival, the Lu family will have a banquet. I will accompany you to sit there, and you can get used to it more. Mrs. Lee nodded quickly, okay, then I will also see what rich people are like, and I will try my best to pretend to be evil in the future. Everyone laughed when they heard this. There are not many people in the family, so lunch is simple, but simple does not mean it is not delicious. Mrs. Kui brought 2 fans of ribs, and Mrs. Lee chopped off half of the fan, hoping to stew cabbage. How could Jian be willing to let the good ribs get wasted? He quickly picked most of the baskets of green beans and 7 or 8 white sweet potatoes in the space. Actually, she wanted to bring out some potatoes and tender corn, but unfortunately, these things were still too eye-catching, so she had to settle for the next best thing. Mrs. Lee was dragged by her granddaughter to look at the beans and sweet potatoes, so she scratched her nose and whispered, just this time, you must be more careful in the future. Jian nodded immediately and added with a smile, get quilt, quilt. Grandma, Fu Niuer wants to eat beans and ribs to get quilt. Of course Mrs. Lee agreed. Her granddaughter still hurts her hand. If she eats more of her favorite food, the wound will heal faster. Bean and pork ribs quilt is actually made in Sci-fi. Blanch the pork ribs, then fry them in a pan, add onion and soy sauce, then add the beans and sweet potato cubes, stir fry until they are tender, add water to cover the beans, and add a little salt. Finally, simply knead the risen dough, roll it into a thick pancake, and cover the beans tightly, just like covering the beans with a thick quilt. In this way, when it comes out of the pot, the beans and ribs are simmered and the noodles are steamed. Even part of it is soaked in the soup, and the aroma of noodles and meat are mixed. Take a bite and it is really delicious. Just thinking about it makes me salivate. If paired with a bowl of golden millet porridge and a few pickles, it is simply a taste that all Sci-fi people dream about. Shui Yun wanted to help, but the old lady didn't agree, because she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to make the food that her granddaughter wanted to eat. Jia and Jiaxi and his cat brother came back from playing outside. When they saw their sister squatting on the threshold of the stove holding her special blue and white bowl, they knew there would be something delicious today. So the 3 brothers stood on the door frame and looked inside with smiles. Old Mrs. Lee was taking the blame. When she saw her grandchildren like this, she laughed and scolded, your sister is still young, so let's just talk about it. You are all big kids, and you are still doing this, and you are not afraid of other people's jokes. I'm telling you, your sister-in-law is here. She went back next door to change clothes, and she'll be here for dinner soon. Jian Jiaxi and cat brother both blushed and found reasons for themselves. We don't want to beg, we just want to help grandma serve the food. Yes, we want to help grandma serve the food. Yeah, brothers are right. Old Mrs. Lee glared at them and ignored them. But when I put the ribs into my granddaughter's bowl, I still gave him a few more pieces. Sure enough, when she turned around to look for the pottery pot, Jian quickly grabbed the ribs and each brother stuffed a piece into his mouth. Jia and Jiaxi and cat brother were so hot that they breathed air conditioning. While waving to their sister, they ran to the main room to set up tables and chairs. Old Mrs. Lee suppressed her laughter, and her men became more and more efficient in their work. Huanyang's house will be given 1 copy, and the backyard will be given 1 copy. Sister-in-law Liu's house can't leave any difference. With everything in order, the Li family finally started to eat. At this time, Grandma He and sister-in-law Kayang also came back. The old lady invited them to eat together, and the 2 of them bowed and thanked them and sat at the end of the table. After dinner and the children dispersed, Mrs. Kui asked, what did the Sun family say? Mother, he replied, when we sent sister-in-law Lee there, Mr. Sun was also at home. When we explained the cause and effect, Mr. Sun and Mrs. Sun looked bad. It was obvious that they didn't know anything about it. Mr. Sun wanted to prepare a gift and come to apologize in person, but we refused. We just said that the grudges would be settled and that we would have no contact with him in the future. Yes, that's how it should be. Mrs. Kui snorted coldly. Mr. Sun and his wife are quite sensible. I hope they can take good care of that unruly slave in the future. Old Mrs. Lee nodded. Nanny's mother has been ill for a long time, so sister-in-law Lee may have made all the decisions on her behalf. As time went by, she forgot her duties. Mrs. Kui waved her hand and advised, don't think about it so much. Whether it's good or not is everyone else's business. Let's just think about how to celebrate the festival. She pointed to her yard next door. Auntie, I'll light up my oven and let's bake mooncakes. I've brought the fillings and molds. I just ate my auntie's bean quilt, so let's try it too. Craftsmanship. Before the old lady could respond, Jiyan was already jumping and shouting, okay, let's eat mooncakes. Mrs. Lee angrily tapped her granddaughter on the forehead. Anyone can eat it, but you can't eat it. I forgot who ate too many snacks last night, and my stomach hurts. Jiyan held up the rice dumpling hand and pestered Grandma pitifully. Finally, she got permission, but she could only eat half a piece. At dusk, Li Zhensheng, Li Laosi, and Tao Hongying came back from the city and smelled a sweet smell coming from the direction of their home from a distance. Only when we got to the door did we realize that it was the Kui family baking mooncakes. Every child in the village is waiting in front of Kui's house. Sister-in-law Kayang brought out a large plate of mooncakes and gave each of the children a piece. The children saluted one after another and ran away with smiles. Li Zhensheng and Li Laosi wanted to avoid suspicion, so they returned home. Tao Hongying stepped into the Kui family yard and saw her daughter sitting on a chair, kicking her legs and eating mooncakes happily. She stepped forward and hugged her daughter directly. Jiyan was startled. She had no place to hide the mooncake in her hand, so she could only smile stupidly with her mouth full of mooncake dregs. Hey, Mom, eat the mooncake. My aunt baked it, it's delicious. While talking, she also stuffed the mooncake full of teeth marks into her mother's mouth. Tao Hongying was so angry that she didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and pinched her daughter's buttocks. Mrs. Lee hurriedly stepped forward to rescue her granddaughter and rectify her name. Don't scold us, Funiuur. This girl was very good today. She only ate this piece of mooncake. She really didn't eat much. Tao Hongying glanced at the baked mooncakes. One was as big as a palm and weighed 2 or 3. She really couldn't complain. This piece of mooncake costs more than a dozen yuan of ordinary snacks. Mrs. Kui's hands were stained with flour, but she still asked Tao Hongying to interrupt and rescue Xiao Funiu. Hongying, how about the restaurant? The menu has been decided, will it open tomorrow? Tao Hongying's face lit up when she talked about the restaurant, and she quickly replied, I tried more than a dozen dishes today, and added 6 to the menu, plus all kinds of seafood, which is enough to cope with it for a while. It's just a dish with chili pepper added. I don't know if the diners here will like it. I think if it's in Sci-fi, it will be a big hit. Jiyan quickly stuffed the last bit of mooncake into her mouth, and she was in high spirits when she saw her mother talking about the big things and small things in the restaurant. She suddenly felt that she had neglected her mother too much. Mother is only busy with trivial matters at home every day, and cooking set meals in the valley is really a waste of her talent. If it were placed in the previous life, my mother would have been a career-oriented strong woman. Ignoring everyone's jokes and gossip, Jiyan held her chubby face and thought about it. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 388. Chapter 388. It's not that easy to be a mother. Everyone in the family, old and young, has been busy all day, and they don't have the energy to cook dinner. Sister-in-law Kyung and Dongmei brought Shui Yun and 3 others to make bone soup, noodles, and some side dishes. After everyone was full, they all rested early. Ji Yun slept in the Kui family yard tonight. During the day, her aunt showed off her power and helped her out. Of course she had to reciprocate the favor and try her best to be cute. As a result, Mrs. Kui experienced the pain and joy of being a mother. The little fat girl took her time eating during dinner, and now she was sitting in her arms, eating snacks secretly. Her little mouth gnawed as fast as a rabbit, and she still remembered to give her a bite from time to time. After having eaten and drank enough, the aunt and nephew went to the bathhouse to take a bath. The little girl couldn't get her hands wet while holding up the rice dumplings, so Mrs. Kui helped with the bath. Occasionally, the girl, who is as white and fat as a rice bug, giggles and hides when she encounters the ticklish meat. Mrs. Kui would catch people all over the bath, bring them back, and continue to rub them. If they ran away, they would catch them again. Finally washed up and got into bed. Mrs. Kui's tired arms could not be lifted. It's a pity that the fat girl wants to listen to a bedtime story again. Mrs. Kui could only search for some interesting allusions that the children could listen to. Halfway through, the fat girl didn't fall asleep. She started snoring. The good news was tossing and turning and I couldn't sleep. I regretted that I had eaten snacks behind my grandma and mother's back, so that now I felt a little uncomfortable in my stomach. She was not sleepy for the moment, and her mind was wandering around the small space courtyard. In her previous life, she lived in semi-seclusion in the small courtyard of her hometown. Apart from growing vegetables and raising chickens, ducks, pigs, and sheep in the courtyard, the most important thing she did was read to pass her free time. There are different worlds in the books. Every time you finish reading one, it feels like you have experienced a life with the protagonist. Those joys, sorrows, and joys made her cry and laugh, and the happy ending gave her great comfort. All of this made her forget about the loneliness in reality and the indelible pain left to her by the breakup of her original family. There are 3 main rooms in the small courtyard. The east room is her bedroom, and the west room is her study. There are many books on the shelves against the wall, some old and new. Today her focus is on a few cookbooks that are at the bottom of the box. Before returning to her hometown to live in seclusion, she also wanted to be a refined, petty bourgeoisie woman. The 8 major cuisines, including pasta, braised food, even Chinese pastries and baked pastries, are all covered. It's a pity that every time I bought materials and tools, I lost to laziness before I even started. Euphemistically speaking, I am too busy with work to take care of. After returning to her hometown, she had a lot of leisure time, but after burning earthen stoves and growing vegetables and food with her own hands, she became more willing to eat original food. For example, boil tender corn in a large pot of water, and steam a few tender eggplants and potatoes on a grate. It is a simple and nutritious meal. So, those recipes and tools were still thrown into the corner by her to gather dust. Nowadays, it's really not easy to find it when rummaging through boxes and cabinets. When I got up early, there were unknown birds chirping outside the window, as if they were in my ears, making Mrs. Kui reluctant to wake up. She yawned and subconsciously wanted to get up, only to realize that her arms were a little heavy. She turned around and saw that the fat girl had her hair hanging down, her injured little hand raised, and the other hand hugged her arm, like a little monkey climbing a big tree, relying on and close to her. Perhaps she was dreaming about eating, and the fat girl's little mouth cooed a few times from time to time, which was so cute. Mrs. Kui quickly lay down, gently pulled out her arm, and half held the fat girl in her arms. She even breathed softly, for fear of waking up the child's sweet dream. When they divorced, she vowed never to marry again, preferring to live alone and never trust any man again. After all, Her ex-husband cared deeply about her at the beginning and had a deep love for her. In the end, they didn't hate each other and were like life or death enemies. But during this period, she slowly changed her mind. If she gets married again, she wants to have a baby, a fat baby like Funiur. Even if she is so unlucky and meets a black-hearted man, she will not be so lonely if she has a child to accompany her for the rest of her life. What's more, she won't be blind once and twice, right? Suddenly, that handsome and tall figure flashed through her mind, and she slowly blushed. Ji-Yun didn't know that the time she spent sleeping in had already helped her sister find a new goal and direction in life. When she woke up, her family had already gone to the city again. Today the restaurant officially opened and it was even busier. Fortunately, the old lady and Mrs. Kui continued to bake mooncakes in the yard, planning to give £2 to every family in the village to add to the joy of the festival. After the mooncakes are baked, they need to be sealed and left for a few days to recover the oil. The surface will be oily, making them more appetizing. But Ji-Yun likes it just out of the oven, the sweetness with heat, and it is also extremely delicious. This morning, she followed her grandma and aunt, acting cute, and ate 2 small pieces of mooncakes. Of course, she didn't eat much for lunch. So, she was resolutely kicked out of the Kui family yard in the afternoon. In the evening, Mr. Wen returned from the city with the Li family. As soon as he got off the carriage, he saw his junior sister bringing a plate of mooncakes, so he greeted with a smile, "Junior sister, these are the mooncakes you baked. Are there any with 5-nut filling?" Mrs. Kui didn't know what she thought of, her face was a little red, she responded and hurried into the Li family yard. Mr. Wen looked a little confused. He lowered his head and checked his clothes. There seemed to be nothing wrong with him. Why was the junior sister blushing? Li Zhensheng had been running Sihija for many years when he was in the Wang family, and had a very good reputation. In addition, he was almost killed before and finally returned to the Li family. That incident was also well known to everyone. So, now that Sihija has been renamed Cyclamen and reopened, the whole new city is full of curiosity and misses the original old flavor. Today's opening, the 3 floors of the restaurant were packed with relatives and friends who came to congratulate the restaurant, plus diners. Tao Hongying and Jia Huan, as well as Master Zhang, the cook from the south, were so tired that they almost collapsed. But the guests were full of praise for their food. Originally, this place is inland and there is not much seafood. Everyone who eats it has a sense of freshness. In addition to Tao Hongying's several new dishes, the guests have never seen or tasted them before. As for eating spicy food, those who love it will love it to death, and those who don't will be spicy to death. But whether you love it or not, the red dishes are enough to attract your attention. Several traditional specialties are also delicious. These combined really satisfy everyone's taste buds and curiosity. From now on, cyclamen will be a hot topic in and outside the city for at least a month. The village chief, Uncle Zhao, Lu Baiatu, and others all knew that Li Zhensheng's restaurant was opening today. They want to help, but they are powerless and can only keep thinking about it. At this moment, they heard that everyone was back, and they hurriedly came to ask a few questions. Mrs. Li stayed with them to eat together. There were 2 tables in the main room and the east room. The men are in the main room, and the women and children are in the east room. The food is not that sumptuous, but the freshly steamed buns are soft and the radish and mutton stewed in the big pot are fragrant. With the addition of scrambled eggs with fungus, cabbage and pork belly, and cold and sour shredded cabbage to appetize and relieve fatigue, it is enough for everyone to eat. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 389. Chapter 389, Everyday Nausea, let's find out. Tao Hongying was tired after a long day and her arms were sore. She only took a few bites and then put down her chopsticks. Jiyan noticed it, so he took a spoon and fed his mother the custard one mouthful at a time. She was thinking that after these few days of busy work, she would quickly start a small business for her mother, so that she would not be so tired and give her a chance to shine. Tao Hongying didn't know that her daughter was secretly planning for her. She ate the egg custard and rubbed her daughter's soft hair with her head. Even though she was a little tired, she felt very at ease. The next day was the Mid-Autumn Festival, but because the restaurant was doing well, everyone went about their business as usual. It's just that I came back early in the afternoon, because every family would get together to enjoy the moon in the evening. The old lady and Mrs. Kui, together with Grandma He, sister-in-law Kyung, and Dong Mei, worked hard for most of the day. They got up early and distributed mooncakes to every house in the village. Including the teachers and children in the school, they were not left behind. After noon, they began to prepare various ingredients. Bleaching things that can be done with water, washing things that can be washed, and stacking them neatly. Even the oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar are placed next to the pot. Then, Tao Hongying and Jie Huan were asked to cook on the stove, fearing that they would be too tired. Originally, Li Laosan and Zhao Yuru were supposed to come back with their children, but for some unknown reason, the academy only gave them a half-day holiday and the students were not allowed to leave the small town of Luoan. In this way, Jiaran and brother Li couldn't come back in time. How could Li Laosan and Zhao Yuru leave their two children alone to celebrate the festival, so they could only send a message to the restaurant and tell their families that they would stay in Luoan for the festival. Old Mrs. Li didn't care. When our children and grandchildren are older, they can no longer stay together like they did when they were children. As long as they know they are safe, that's enough. Moreover, this year, the eldest son she misses the most has returned home. If she is still dissatisfied with anything, it is because she is too greedy. But she was as curious as everyone else about the fact that school would not be on holiday. So, after dinner, the dining table was removed, and everyone set out fruits, tea, and mooncakes in the courtyard, and while admiring the moon together, Mrs. Li chased the children away and asked a few questions in a low voice. There were many people talking in the restaurant, and you could hear a word or two about everything. Li Zhensheng replied, I heard that there was a student in the college who had contact with a peasant girl outside the town, and caused some trouble. The peasant girl's family I found the academy and made a fuss. The dean of the academy and the gentleman discussed it and decided not to give students a full day off before the Chinese New Year. Even the one-day break every 10 days will be changed to a half-day break every 5 days. Everyone nodded and understood. Jie Huan has not been in Luoan these days, and has been busy in the kitchen today. He didn't know about this. Now, after hearing a few words, he felt guilty and scared, and he was even more grateful. Although he and Wenjuan had never held hands before, after all, they had been walking around in private for so long, and it was neither emotional nor reasonable. Fortunately, the concubine of the Peng family was greedy for their own shop, and Grandma happened to come to the door, so the matter was settled in time. Otherwise, it would be him and Wenjuan who are being discussed, ridiculed, and embarrassed by everyone now. The more Jie Huan thought about it, the more frightened he became, and he couldn't help but tremble. At this time, Jiyan ran over, squeezed into his arms and shouted, "Brother, I want a hug." Jie Huan easily put his sister on his lap and sat down. The chubby little girl seemed to have endless heat in her body, so he subconsciously hugged her a little tighter. Jiyan leaned on her brother's arms, nibbling on the fruit, and asked vaguely, "Brother, is my shell bed still there? Has it been stolen? My brother must look after it for me. It belongs to me," thinking that during the day, someone really offered a high price to buy that big shell for his children. He couldn't help but laugh. "Don't worry, It's not just me, uncle, and fourth aunt. Everyone is watching for you. Don't worry if outsiders want to steal it, they can't even touch it. Huh, that's pretty much it, what's mine is all mine. Jian waved her little hands proudly, as if there was silver in the air, and tried her best to hug her back. Jia Huan smiled and held her tightly wrapped little hand. Yes, they are all yours, and this rice dumpling is also yours. Not only was Jian not angry, but she rolled her eyes and immediately acted coquettishly. Brother, Grandma said, take whatever patch you want. I also need to patch it up, so that the wound can heal quickly. Jia Huan pretended not to understand, and responded with a troubled expression, Ah, are you talking about zongzi? At this time of year, glutinous rice is easy to buy, but there is no place to pick zongzi leaves? Jian stared anxiously and waved her chubby hands more and more. She wants to eat pig's knuckles, who said she wants to eat rice dumplings? What do you eat and eat? Is her little hand a few more layers? Everyone couldn't help but look at Jiawen more because of the scandal about the academy students. At this moment, seeing him secretly bullying his sister, Jian was so angry that his hair was about to explode, and he couldn't help but burst into laughter. Tao Hongying hugged her daughter, nodded her little nose, smiled and said scolding, You are so presumptuous, just tell your brother what you want to eat, and he can't cook it for you, you have to be so presumptuous that you can eat and make up for it. Then why are you so greedy and thoughtful now? Is it because your family gave you too much pork belly and chicken hearts when you were a child? Jian lowered her head and hugged the folded flesh on her belly, looking obedient. This made Mrs. Li very distressed. She kept shouting to support her granddaughter, What are you doing? What are you doing? My lucky girl just wants to eat a pig's trotters, and you guys are taking turns to bully her to no end. I'll buy 10 tomorrow. Come back 8 of us and let us Fu Niu eat enough. Fu Niu immediately ran away from my mother's arms and ran towards her grandma. Wow, grandma is the best. Fu Niu loves grandma the most. Grandma loves you the most too. Mrs. Li hugged her granddaughter, gave her a big kiss, and said with a bright smile. Grandparents and grandson are in a rough mood every day. The Li family is used to it, but others look at it with envy and find it strange. After all, whether you love it or not is too embarrassing. Even if you feel it in your heart, no one will say it. Suddenly, there was the sound of horses galloping in the distance. It turned out that the Marquis had returned with a few soldiers. On the Mid-Autumn Festival, there was a night banquet in the palace, and he, the new prince, could not be absent. After finally waiting for the exit, he took the token and asked the city gate to be opened and hurried back. Everyone was happy and came forward to greet him one after another. The Marquis smelled of alcohol and was anxious to go back and change his clothes, so he said to Mrs. Li, Auntie, there is nothing delicious in the banquet in the palace. I am really hungry. Give me a bowl of noodles. Hey, okay, Mrs. Li quickly agreed. So, Mr. Ho took a bath and changed his clothes. When he came to the Li family yard again, there was not only a large bowl of bone soup noodles on the table, but also 2 dishes and a plate of egg pancakes. The Marquis was not polite, picked up his chopsticks and started eating. After he was full, he let out a long sigh of relief. Li Lao joked, Fortunately, I only received the official uniform and haven't gone to the official department to do the roll call. Otherwise, I would be the one who is starving now. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 390. Chapter 390, Only Name, No Real Power. The Marquis hugged Jian, rubbed her little head, and replied, Second brother can escape this time. There is a statute of limitations for the official roll call, and it must be done within a month. From now on, let alone the palace banquet, just you must also attend the semi-monthly meeting. Li Lauer had a headache and couldn't help complaining, there is really no free lunch in the world. Being an earl is so troublesome. Ji Yin stuck out his tongue secretly, always feeling that his second uncle was in Versailles, but there was no evidence. In her opinion, the title of this earl is equivalent to the honorary presidents, honorary principals, and the like in previous lives. Only a name, no real power, but you still need to show up from time to time. In short, you can't just take the benefits without giving anything. The second uncle still dislikes the trouble of being an earl. I don't know how many people in and outside the city have red eyes with envy. Everyone gathered together to chat and laugh lively. In the side room, Madame Hui hugged the child and felt itchy in her heart. She also wanted to go out and talk together and look at the moon. Unfortunately, the moon was still a few days away, so she had to endure it. Grandma He was sitting on the side, waving a rattle to tease the twins. She turned around and smiled when she saw Hui Niang like this. "Madam, don't worry, confinement is like this, you have to hide the cat and not see the wind. Keep on holding on, it will be over soon. After a while, I will bring you a basin of warm water, you can wipe it well and it will feel refreshed." "Thank you, Mama." Hui Niang blushed a little. After all, she is already such a big person, and she still looks like a child who is anxious to go out to play. She is not decent. "Mommy, I told you, I'm really not a lady, just call me Huaniang. Thanks to you and Shui Yun for helping me these days, it's not too late for me to be grateful." Huaniang pulled Grandma He away. "Grandma's hand, when I get out of the moon, I will make you a pair of good shoes as a thank you gift." I don't dare, madam." Grandma He quickly waved her hands, thought about it and said, "Then I will change my words." Huaniang laughed and talked about the fat boy from the Lu family. When she is out of confinement, she can go and see sister-in-law Lu. Lu Biatu and Liu's sister-in-law were also old enough to have a son, and they devoted themselves to their younger son. Hearing that Ji Yi asked Lu Yang to go south with the boat, the two of them waved their hands and said they knew it. They didn't care at all. Mrs. Li had prepared a piece of food for Lu Yang. Fortunately, Lu Yang has a big heart and wishes his parents would leave him alone. Otherwise, the infant Lu Xiao'er would already be disliked by his brother. As the old saying goes, New Year's Day is easy, but ordinary days are difficult. The Mid-Autumn Festival reunion only lasts for one day. If you wake up early and open your eyes, life will go on as usual. Li Zhensheng and others went to the restaurant to be busy again. Mr. Ho took Li Laozi back to the dock camp and brought Li Yong back to see his wife and children. Although Li Lauer has become an earl, he really doesn't have the consciousness of being a nobleman yet. There is no need to worry about the school, so he goes to the valley every day. Tao Hongying is helping out in a restaurant in the city, and sister-in-law Lu is in confinement. If he doesn't take care of the valley, trouble will easily occur. Of course, as an earl, he can no longer go into the valley to joke with guests or serve tea and snacks. He was just sitting in the wooden house, taking care of the accounts, and looking at the reservation list. In the morning, Mr. Wen had already followed Li Zhensheng and others into the city. Mrs. Kui also planned to go back to her village in the afternoon, and now she was playing with the good news. Old Mrs. Li was packing things on the side and discussing the betrothal gift list with her. After all, the Kui family also comes from a scholarly family, and they know more about the preferences and taboos of scholars. Thinking that a few years ago, the family would be able to marry their granddaughter-in-law, the old lady was really emotional and happy. Time flies so fast. Maybe in a year or two, she will be able to have a great-grandson. I'll go to Luoan tomorrow and I'll set a date with the Peng family. I'm going to marry my first granddaughter-in-law. She doesn't know anything, so let's figure it out, Mrs. Li said happily. When Mrs. Kui heard the laughter, she said, "Don't be afraid of this, Auntie, you have many grandsons." When you get all 7 grandsons-in-law, there will be no one in the world who is more familiar with marriage than you. The old lady also smiled. Before she could say anything, Jia 11 and brother Cat had already ran back from outside. Maybe he was impatient, but brother Cat raised his foot and tripped over the threshold. He fell so hard that he grimaced and wanted to cry. Jian and Jiaxi hurriedly stepped forward to help their brother, and drove him into the house on the left and right. Jia 11 shouted, "Grandma, when are we going to Luoan? There is no fun at home. We want to go and play with our eldest brother and brother Li." Old Mrs. Li didn't feel any distress at all. She raised her hand directly, and one of her grandsons rewarded her with a chestnut. "How old are you? You are a young man of 12 or 13. You know how to play all day long. Go and wash off the dirt on your body and wash your hair. Also, pack yourself up with the things you usually use, and I will send you to Luoan to study tomorrow. If you dare to have fun in Luoan, there will be a gentleman to take care of you." The 3 boys hugged their heads, turned around and ran away. After a while, there was another commotion in the bathtub in the wing room. Obviously, the 3 naughty boys went crazy while taking a bath. The old lady is too lazy to pay attention to her. She has to send them to Luoan tomorrow. Mrs. Kui saw it and kept laughing. It is clear to onlookers that the old lady now dislikes her grandchildren for making noise, and is afraid that in a few days she will be thinking about them and will not be able to eat or sleep. After lunch, Mrs. Kui went back. Jiyan used the excuse to sleep, but actually took advantage of her grandma to go out and ran into the space to do hard work, trying to become a master of simplified and traditional Chinese translation. Old Mrs. Li didn't know what her granddaughter was plotting. At this moment, she was talking to Aunt Wu about the food shop. His third aunt, our family Jian, Jiaxi, and brother Mao are going to Luoan to study. Plus Jiaran and brother Li, there are 5 boys. The previous small shop was a bit cramped, so I bought one new yard. From now on, Yuru will stay in the yard and take care of the food of several children. There is only the 3rd child left in the shop, which is difficult to support. If you and your wife care about Go Shenger and don't mind the hard work of the shop, just go to Luoan to do a favor. Your wages will still be calculated according to the work points in the village. If the shop's business is good, we will give you bonus money at the end of the year. You will never be in a loss. Before the old lady could finish speaking, Aunt Wu's eyes were already shining. "Auntie, are you serious? That's great." The couple only had 1 child left, and they were almost killed by bandits before. They really saw more than their eyes. In the future, I can stay close to my children and make money, which is really satisfying. "Let's go, we must go." Aunt Wu kept nodding, fearing that the old lady would regret it. "I will pack my luggage right now, and we will follow Auntie whenever she leaves." Mrs. Li also smiled. "I'll leave tomorrow. Stop cooking in the morning and come to my house to eat." At the end of August, the grain in the fields has been harvested, and from a distance, it looks mottled. The mountains and forests have also changed into dark green and withered yellow, giving them a bit of a depressed look. But there are still people coming and going in Zindu, and the streets are very lively. Jiyan thought her grandma would take her to a restaurant first to see the excitement, but unexpectedly she crossed the city and went to the small town of Luoan first. It may be the Mid-Autumn Festival, and students cannot go home. Their families are worried about them, and many people come to visit or send food and supplies. The town was actually a bit more lively than usual. The carriage arrived in front of the shop, and everyone got off the car. Zhao Yuru welcomed them in. Before they could say a few words, the academy took a lunch break. Jiaran held brother Li's hand, followed by Go Shenger, his steps unusually fast and hurried, and he walked towards the shop with a happy face. End of this chapter.